Apple Incorporated announced tonight Steve Jobs has died at the age of 56.
Death of a man who literally changed the way we live our lives every day.
A leading light of the digital age, a visionary, an icon.
Whether you're a die-hard Apple fan or think the products are overrated, no one can doubt that Steve Jobs shaped the modern world. He turned a tech company into a lifestyle brand, and even 10 years after his death, his legacy remains intact. Steve Jobs was special, and you can find the reasons for this in his biography. But what exactly made this man so special that his appearances were synonymous with creating hype? Why were thousands of people glued to his lips, even when he was just trying to sell them something? Analyzing the life and methods of Steve Jobs can still teach you a lot about business today. And it applies to almost every business. Whether you're an ambitious creator wanting to climb the social media summit, or your dream is a successful dropshipping or affiliate marketing empire, even if you want to start your own business with a side hustle in any other way imaginable. Let's go on a journey together to the secrets of Steve Jobs and find out what guidelines he left us for successful business. Fasten your seatbelt. Are you ready?
Forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Have you ever seen this video? Think different. That's more than just a slogan at the end of a commercial. It was the mantra that shaped Steve Jobs' life even before he became Mr. Apple. Steve grew up in close proximity to engineers from companies like Hewlett-Packard and Intel, and had the interest and talent early on to be part of the computer industry himself. Now, what would you guess he did to get there? College is the wrong answer because he dropped out after just one semester. Instead, he traveled around and gained experiences that shaped his personality. Among other things, he took a calligraphy course. This is the art of beautiful writing. Sounds pretty useless for a computer engineer, doesn't it? You'd be wrong, because it was on this course that Jobs learned the basics of design and realized how essential good design is for all areas of life. Look at Apple today. A large part of its success lies in design, not in technical superiority. Steve Jobs recognized this early on. While the rest of the world saw computers as a nerdy niche where hardware facts mattered most, Steve was quick to think about how to make them more accessible and attractive to everyone by integrating completely different aspects. In other words, Steve Jobs thought outside of the box. He broke the rules. And that is an idea you should keep in mind because it still applies today. To make yourself and your business special, it's not enough to walk on the beaten track. Take the existing foundation, but build something individual on top of it. You've probably seen the hundreds of training courses for successful side hustles on YouTube. The step-by-step guides on how to make a YouTube channel or dropshipping marketing successful. They're not bad, at least some of them. But how successful can you be if you replicate what others have already done weeks or even months before you? In order for you and your brand to be unique, you need to incorporate parts of yourself. Find a perspective that nobody else has and combine it with the basics that you have learned. This requires a little more courage than copying, but don't be afraid. Only those who experiment can create a bang. Steve Jobs said it himself.
Stay hungry, stay foolish. And I have always wished that for myself.
When Steve Jobs was a young man, Atari was considered a big player in the computer market. And you know what? Steve Jobs got a job there twice, even though he was a hippie and a university dropout. So, in terms of hard skills, he was not at all a suitable candidate for such a position. But Steve Jobs was an individual, and he managed to inspire the bosses with his ideas and his passion. This is the same magic that he conjured up decades later when he stood on stage and announced the first iPhone or the iPad. In January 1984, Steve Jobs paid for one of the most expensive advertising slots ever, at the Super Bowl. And how do you think he used this expensive advertising space? By playing it safe and showing a boring technology clip? No, Apple created an artistic advert that alludes to the literary masterpiece 1984 by George Orwell. Instead of showing the technical specifications of the Macintosh, they tapped into the fear of technology and played with the emotions of the audience. Apple really was a pioneer in this. Look at successful advertising of our age. Nowadays, it's all about storytelling, about emotions. Apple was decades ahead of the curve. And why? because Steve Jobs thought differently, and above all, because he had the self-confidence to make his thoughts real. If you are watching this video, you are probably ambitious yourself, and surely you have lots of ideas for your potential business. But do you always have the confidence to realize them? Maybe you don't, and that is why you prefer to play it safe. But Steve Jobs didn't have these concerns. He wanted to be something special. He wanted his company to be the chosen one, and he walked this path upright and strong.
It's a big one.
Walt Disney Pictures presents
Star Command, come in. Do you read me?
the story of two toys.
There seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
Sometime later, Steve Jobs was at Pixar. Yes, you heard right. Your childhood heroes from Toy Story, Finding Nemo, or The Incredibles were created under the aegis of Steve Jobs. Back then, computer animation was still a new industry. Pixar and Steve Jobs were small players in the film market. At some point, they were bought by Disney. The animation giant ate up an innovative, but ultimately small studio. And Disney had its own ideas for Pixar. They interfered with the scripts and gave instructions on how Woody from Toy Story should be written. In short, Disney believed he should be a real idiot. But Steve Jobs saw it differently. He believed in his original vision, in his idea that Woody was a lovable hero. And so, David stood up to Goliath, and with his passion, he convinced Disney to hold back on creative interventions. And in the end, his Woody version was a mega hit, an essential part of the movie's groundbreaking success. So remember, break the rules if you think the rules are outdated. Have self-confidence. Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, once said, "Steve Jobs created the only lifestyle brand in the tech industry. There are cars people are proud to have, Porsche, Ferrari, Prius, because what I drive says something about me. People feel the same way about an Apple product." That sums up Steve Jobs perfectly. He was not the inventor of computers. You can argue about whether Apple revolutionized them technically at all. But what he definitely revolutionized was its marketing. That is his greatest legacy. He didn't rely on a script that others had already played hundreds of times. He took it and turned it on its head. Steve Jobs was a rule breaker, and he was good at it. So this was the story of Steve Jobs. You can't be like him from one day to the next, but maybe there is a little piece of his rebellion in you, no matter what business you want to make big. And then reach for that little piece and pull it out. It can be worth it.
However, there is one rule that can never be broken. At the end of a YouTube video, you should click the subscribe button. See you next time.